So these particular images of the fright wig photos, or fright wig portraits as they became, people hadn't seen Andy quite like that before, but they really, I don't know, the slight sort of shock in his eyes, I thought really represented him well at that time. He called me when he was coming to London and said, "Oh, gee, I'm coming." I said, "Great." And so we spent a lot of time together here, some dinners with him, with some friends. Actually, it was the only time that I ever met Andy in London. At the time he was saying, "Oh, I should come back more often," because he hated flying. Of course, he never did make it back, sadly. Well, Andy was always surrounded by the most fabulous, glamorous people, apart from me. Of course, the most glamorous of all of them was Grace Jones. This is Grace being painted by Keith Haring, and it is such an incredible image. I think she's an absolute consummate artist. Everything she does is as close to perfection as she can get it. Grace Jones and Debbie Harry. Those were the two people that pioneered attitude and look for the female singer. Grace more in some ways as the ultimate diva, and Debbie as the coolest looking punk girl you could ever find. And I really think their influence has been massive on musical culture. And Grace on everything. That specific photo of Jean-Michel is great because that's exactly how I remember his image all the time with the hair. He was completely connected to pop culture, particularly jazz music and sport. He loved sport, boxers. And I think that's one of the things that Andy recognized in Jean-Michel, that he was, one, completely unique, and two, he had great ideas, because that's the currency of art. You know, he really invented a sort of new genre almost on his own, and he was in a very unusual position, I think, being really one of the first African-American artists to break through. But Andy led the way for him, and really he acted as a real father figure, and he loved Jean-Michel. He knew how special he was. This particular photo is actually, I think, around mid-80s. It's around the fright wig period, might be just before. I think Andy was probably absolutely perfectly comfortable with Mapplethorpe, but they knew each other well. You always felt with Andy that he deliberately put that slightly uncomfortable look on his face. I've got lots of pictures of him that I took, Polaroids that I took of him, where he looked slightly uncomfortable, but that was just the way he was. In reality, he knew what he was doing with everything. If he didn't want to answer questions, he'd always go, I don't know, when of course he knew. I suppose out of all the Warhol imagery, a lot of the portraits are the most celebrated and well-known images. It's the Jackie Kennedy ones that always strike me as being the saddest. The later pictures really tell the story of that very famous moment. The time I spent in New York through the 80s with Andy and all of his gang, the one person that I never remember meeting was Holston. By the time I'd arrived in New York in the early 80s, there was possibly a new guard coming through, but I loved that sort of late 70s glamour. Those big shoulders and the power suits and the right handbags and shoes, and Holston really was super glam. And I think that's, Andy always loved that. The amount of times I heard him say, "Oh God, so glamorous." I think during Andy's lifetime he made an enormous amount of art. His knowledge of the history of art was breathtaking. He started as a commercial artist. He worked for fashion magazines doing beautiful drawings of shoes. And so he knew how to work and to make money from art. Sometimes he'd say, "Oh, I have a big organization, I've got a lot of people to feed." At the same time as always being sincere about what he was doing and believing in his work, which I think he did right till the very end.